Welcome to Beyond the Protocol, where I'm so excited to have our guest today, Jess Thompson, who is a clinical research professional in our industry and understands the power of project management principles. And I think even more importantly, thanks to the amazing way LinkedIn works, is now someone I consider a friend too. So welcome, Jess. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you, Melody. So great to see you, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just dig right into the tea, right? So tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you land in our industry and what has got you to the point where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm actually one of those unicorns that went to school for clinical research. It's always funny when people say, at conferences that most people kind of just landed here. I actually jumped too. Yeah, no. I love clinical research. I actually visited Tufts whenever I was in college and really fell in love with it then and started in a lab and processing specimens for a clinical trial, then moved into more of a coordinator role, then into regulatory. And then from there, kind of just worked my way, our little chutes and ladders, I think is how you described it the other day. So I've worked at lab, site, CRO sponsor, and then now over in more of a service provider role of for training and education. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride, and I would have never expected to land here. Yeah, exactly. So even though jumped in full, both feet in, it it never turned out the way I expected it to. I kind of expected to be in a lab for a while, more so than more patient facing, and then fell in love with project management and education and mentoring. So it's crazy how you kind of end up where you end
I
up.
know, I know. But one thing I love about your journey is you are truly a unicorn because not too many people have the site side, the CRO side, the lab side, and the sponsor side. And so you're like 360-degree powerhouse when it comes to that.
And Barry's last see it that way. Been really cool to kind of see the differences and the similarities. And, I always say that all of those experiences have really helped me throughout my career. And they really helped me as a project manager, especially on the sponsor side, to understand, what our labs are going through, what our sites are going through, and to be able to see that perspective because so many conversations, I'm sure you've had those as well, Melody, where, it's kind of us versus them. And I will be the first to tell you that there is no part of this industry that is easy. Everybody has their own unique challenges and different situations. The stress is different, but the stress is there.
Yeah,
And
it's real.
yeah, and I honestly cannot even tell you throughout all of that which was the most stressful and which was the least stressful because they all, in their own way, were insane.
Right. I agree. And I like you said us against them. And I can tell you, the companies and even more so the teams that understand the magic of collaboration and getting everyone on the same page where the lines blur and you're not sure who the vendor is, who the sponsor, who the CRO is. And even sometimes with the smaller, like phase 1 studies, you have just a few sites or the smaller phase 2. Um, when everyone's working together on the same page, the lines get blurred and you just have such better outcomes on all sides. So
Cohesive. So you can be
them concept because it just doesn't net the same type of results you can get when we just all get on the same page and work towards the same goals.
I couldn't agree more, 100%, and I it is so much easier on those smaller studies, but I've also found that those teams that don't really ever say, "That's not my job." You know what I mean? Anytime I hear that, I'm like, "Oh, goodness gracious, this
There
means
we go.
Exactly, it's gonna be a nightmare because it's us versus them, that whole silo mentality. A lot of we have to kinda shift and morph and pivot, and, what might not be our job today could very well be our job tomorrow or in 2 hours. So, it's like understanding that, and you understand that too with, like, that agile mentality of, we can't really practice agile project management and clinical research just because of the way that we are, how our studies work, but
Mm.
having that mentality is so important of, we just gotta get the job done, and that means to picking up where you can.
And I think sometimes we get into this argument that that's easy to apply on smaller studies or with our smaller sponsors, but forget about it when we think about the large companies and the 1,200 site programs, right? But I disagree. I think we can still apply the same if you understand how to manage a project, right? And the principles that lay the groundwork for being successful and not just running a chaotic situation where everyone's just running around like chickens with their heads cut off type of. And I
Yeah, not that fly by the seat of our pants project management.
right, right. We've had a lot of conversations about that, and I love that you say everyone's a project manager. And in our industry, the PMP isn't as highly regarded as it is in other industries. So talk to me a little bit about that and your view on project management principles and that we all should be practicing them and understand how they work.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my bread and butter and what I love to talk about. You're speaking my love language. I know. So I always say that's really like you said, I say all the time, we're all project managers. And I actually got my PMP whenever I was a study coordinator, which I actually have a lot of questions about too, because study coordinators assume that they are not project managers. And I'm like, y'all, you are our project managers because each of those patients, that's a project. Each of those studies that you work on, that's a project. Every time you submit something to the IRB, that is a project. And so no, I'm preaching to the choir here, Melody, but just for the audience. So a project has a beginning, an end, and objectives to meet. So if anything that you do falls under that criteria, has a beginning, an end, and objectives to meet, and you're managing portions of that, you're a project manager. Exactly. And you may be an accidental project manager. I know I was. And I always say, like, an accidental project manager is essentially somebody who's thrust in that role without having that experience, without having that formal training. Because in our industry, we really, like you said, we don't really recognize project management as something that, we train on. It's kind of like you learn from your peers, you learn from people that you train under, but what you're learning in that situation is kind of their only what they've done, right?
Right.
You're not really understanding what project management is, and all the other industries out there really use that PMI, like Project Management Institute methodology, except for clinical research, which is
Yeah, it's mind
shocking.
blowing. It's mind blowing. I just don't understand it. Um I just don't understand it, but I'm really happy to know. I feel like you're trailblazing here and making a way for those of us that are in the trenches and we're truly project managers to go and get recognized and have that those letters behind our name and really feel like it's important because I can even say for myself, I opted not to get the PMP because it wouldn't make really a difference in terms of clients and working with teams and all of the things because experience I felt like trumped those letters saying I'd gone through it. But now I'm thinking I probably should just go get it, right? And just go through it and understand where I stand on the PMP foundations level. 15 years into managing projects, I think it's important to have.
Well, and I will say, so the PMP it's a beast. It really is. I studied for that thing for probably 6 months even after taking or doing the coursework for it.
Mhm.
But I will say the frustrating part about that is that it is not specific to clinical research, but there's nothing out there right now that is. So a lot of those tools and methodologies and everything that you learn and you test on, they're not all going to be applicable for clinical research because what we do is so unique. And no other industry really has thousands of sub projects under a major project. So I think a great way to put it is like if you've heard me speak, you've heard me say these numbers a million times before, where I did the math on like a phase 3 study. And just say a phase 3, 250 sites, we are using a CRO, 3 countries, and 40,000 patients. There's over 1,200 people doing project management duties in that. And that calculated with super conservative numbers.
Mhm.
And then within that, there's over 41,000 sub projects because each of those patients is a project. Each of those sites is a project. So the things that you learn on the PMP or you're tested on the PMP, it's not going to really be able to use one, like apples to apples in clinical research. You kind of have to be able to morph it a little bit based on what exactly your role is. But the good thing about the PMP is that it's recognized across industries. And so that's one that I always say, just in case, right? Our industry is so volatile. You never really know. So I always say that's the one that I would go for just because it's internationally recognized. It's recognized across industries because unlike clinical research, other industries, you can be a PMP and you don't really have to necessarily have experience in that industry. You know what I mean? You're a project manager, your expertise is
Yeah.
project management. And so you could technically pick up a project in any industry and use it and use your skills for that. But oh, but you're not for research
Happening. No, it's experience coupled with your PMP certification.
Yes, and that's another question that I get a lot too, is if you're a PMP, do you recommend people that are from outside the industry coming in and then us training them on clinical research? But I'm actually of the other mindset where I think we need to train our professionals on project management because it's so niche. What we do is so niche.
I fully agree with you. I really do. And as we look at, new talent coming in, right, to the industry, I think just training and professional development in general is like it needs to be such a front and center discussion and topic. And then we include the PMP because I feel like the PMP certification is the foundations are much needed and the certification is like the icing on this cake.
It really is, and if you look at, like, PMIs, I'm not sure if you've done that research. I haven't looked at it in years, so I'm not gonna give you specific numbers, but a lot of people were saying they got, like, a 20% pay increase just for obtaining the PMP. Yeah, because it is just like, our certifications in clinical research, like CCRC or whatever, that we have to prove that we've been in the industry or in the role for so many years, 3 to 5 for PMPs, and then you have to take 35 formal hours of training, and then you actually sit for your test. So, it's not a piece of cake. It's an intense test, and, um so I mean, I think that going into it fully aware of how much
Work and the commitment.
yes, that's so important. But I mean, I think even as an industry, I'm not sure we've really been ready for it to really start doing PMP because again, I feel like the first 2 years of my business, I've just been convincing people they're project managers because it's not something you talk
I
about.
Yeah, you're turning a big ship for sure. For sure.
Slowly. You should
Forward. Very slowly. Okay. So I'm gonna change direction a little bit. I want to talk about the landscape of mental health in our industry. I think just in knowing, right, our colleagues and our friends that are in this with us, we both have similar experiences where you take on a lot professionally. I know 5 years ago I had a mild stroke and it was almost fully because of my workload and not managing the stress that I dealt with at work and then it coming home and I never turned it off. And just physiologically, it just turned into that. And I think we both have similar experiences where we had to have a light bulb moment and realize no more. I have to adjust what I'm doing. So I would love to hear your story.
Absolutely, and I just wanna thank you too because that's where I think you and I bonded initially was just we hit that rock bottom, and we didn't want other people to hit that because, like you said with your stroke and mine, I ended up having to check myself into somewhere just because I couldn't function anymore, like, I was crying between meetings, it was not good, I couldn't imagine having to exist in my body for, like, 1 more minute.
Any more time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are living that right now. Like they haven't hit rock bottom yet. But I think if we can convey to them that it's not worth it and to just stop, then it's worth us coming together and having this show today.
I could not agree more, and, I always say, like, whenever I first came out on LinkedIn, I think that's where I really started getting a lot of followers on LinkedIn was because I just put it out there. I just said, I had to check myself in somewhere because I was having severe anxiety, and I was diagnosed with panic disorder because it got to the point where I'd see my company's name on a pen and have a panic attack just because of the name of the company and just like timelines and deadlines. And I know a lot of us after COVID, especially, everybody, the world saw how fast we can work. But the thing is, we were all coming together working on a pandemic. This was unprecedented. This should not have become the normal.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it became the normal
I
after
date.
COVID.
It did not, that pace and that way of working did not leave us. It's still very present 5 years later.
Right, right, exactly. And
The mission to see if we can do it faster. Like I hear this all the time. Can we do it faster? Can we do it faster? I'm just like, oh my goodness.
right. And if you do it faster, what are you gonna be asked next time? To do it even faster and to do it cheaper. And that's what I mean, and as project managers, we all know that that's literally impossible. Like, there's only so much you can do with a certain amount of funding, a timeline, scope, and quality. There's only so much you can do. And in clinical research, we don't want our quality to suffer. So many of us, we're type A's, we're type A personality, we're overachievers, perfectionists. Like, we're literally set up for running ourselves into the ground, following what we're passionate about.
On our own.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I can tell you 100% that I was at fault for getting myself in that situation because, again, type A, perfectionist, passionate, driven. Like, I'm an Enneagram 3. I don't know about you, but like, I'm a through and through, I am that person. And I know so many of us are that way. And so we're just like wired for it.
To naturally drawn to clinical operations.
Exactly, because we're so good at it, but at the same time, it can be our detriment. And yeah, and I don't know about you, but it's been really cool to see over the last 5, oh my goodness, 5 years, 3 to 5 years maybe, of how that conversation has changed in our industry, of it being almost taboo to talk about it. And I know whenever I posted about it, people were telling me that, "You better watch out, you might get sued, you" all these crazy kind of things, but the things people weren't seeing was the hundreds and hundreds of messages I got in my direct messages from people saying, "Thank you, because this gave me hope to stay one more day."
Yeah,
And so from there, I kind of adopted the whole heal out loud so others don't die in silence because
I love that.
it's it's so hard, like, and it's hard to talk about your mental health, but
It is. It really,
we're in healthcare. Like,
yeah, we should be able to.
right. If anybody should be able to, it should people who are in healthcare and trying to find cures for these illnesses and these diseases and without killing ourselves in the process and becoming the patients ourselves.
I agree. And I think 5 years later from the pandemic, here we are kind of in another, situation that our world is going through. And I think our industry is feeling it, right? At least the beginnings of it. And we have no idea what's to come. And that brings a whole new level of anxiety and stress and unknowns. And I think people just have to remember what's really important and not to get sucked into this black hole.
And to talk about it. I think that that's the biggest thing for me, and I don't know about you, but I never really talked about like, I didn't surround myself with community who understood. I didn't you how I fully. Right, exactly. And then but professionally, it's so needed because there's other people that are going through it too. And maybe they have some kind of resources or, even us speaking about it, like, we've gone through it. We know how to. Exactly, exactly. Even if we're making ourselves stay off that slippery slope all the time.
We can help some other people get off the slippery slope and find their own way to navigate. And sometimes you go through things not just for yourself, but to be able to help others behind you. I think that's a really important piece to remember too.
I I couldn't agree more. I would and if there's anything that, I think you and I shared that when we speak as well, is that, I don't want people to have to go through that. I would rather be able to show them the signs of burnout, tell my story so that way they don't experience that as well. Because when you hit that significant burnout phase, it takes months to come back from, years even. I don't know.
Harder to come back from that than just making the adjustments before you get there.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Oh, 100%. Yeah, because if you don't take the time, your body's going to force you to take the time. I mean, we both ended up hospitalized in one way or another because we didn't listen to our bodies and what we needed, and
And you know what? While we were out of the game, the work continued, right? The study deliverables did not stop. Our chairs were filled temporarily. Her lipid had to be permanent, and the work kept going, and I think that's something that we have to remember and keep in mind when we're, like, really putting this level of weight and pressure on ourselves physically and mentally, to be excellent, and that's not to say that we change that, it's just we have to prioritize.
exactly, and also kind of I think that's such a good point because, I you hear it all the time of yes, your family is never gonna be able to replace you the way that work can, or, like, your friends and whoever is in your life. Work can replace you so fast. You're unfortunately a number in a lot of these big companies, but you're not to your family, and so you have to change that whole narrative in your brain and even in your life to say, "Okay, this isn't sustainable. This isn't where my core values lie. My core values lie here," and really focusing on that because I don't know about you, but for me, I mean, even just being out of alignment with my core values where I was focusing only on work
Mhm.
and not focusing on community and focusing on my family and focusing on all these other things that also matter to me, that was making burnout so much worse too
Yes, it does.
because there was no time to heal.
Mhm. I agree. And we're living life. We're not working life, right? So we have to find that it's so cliche about balance. And for a while I was just so anti, I didn't want to hear the word balance. Because everyone was using it, I felt like it was getting watered down. But in our conversation today, I think it's really relevant. Balance matters. It really does. All right. So, future of learning and networking. Where do you think we're headed in our industry with learning and networking?
I it This is so fascinating to me because I don't know about you, but I hear there's always buzzwords, right? There's always all these fancy buzzwords, what's
Mhm.
flashy. And for me, I feel like the buzzword needs to be training and education because there's so many things in our industry. Tech isn't going to fix it all. I'm sorry for all the tech people listening. It's just not. It's not going to fix it all. And it doesn't fix the lack of training that we all see that so many people in clinical operations and when I say clinical operations, I mean anything involved with actually operationalizing the clinical trial. Exactly.
Client side, vendor side, sponsor side, across the board.
Exactly.
I know you and I are both on this mission together, and I think we are taking different approaches to it, and who we serve. At the end of the day, they end up being the same, but we do it differently.
Eh,
And I love that we've come together and we're connected, and we have the same mission. We're just doing it a little bit differently.
Yes.
And so I would say as we try to get this messaging across and get both people and organizations to understand how critical learning is, it's not the curtains in the room. It's literally learning and development, training, making sure our people know what they're doing is literally the foundation of the building. It's like putting people in a house and there's no floors or walls.
Right. Right. And there's nobody that knows how to build them either. Even if you don't have them, you can't fix it.
Oh, like, oh, and I don't care how many times we go to AI to ask them what we should do, it's not gonna have the right outcome, right?
Right, and I mean, even I don't know, but and one of the most frustrating things about this industry for me is these, like, regulatory bodies and all these other folks that are coming out and say like, they give us guidance documents, but the guidance documents don't tell us the how-tos.
No,
We
they're
literally just operate it. Yeah, and we have to figure it out by trial and error, and then everybody has different trial and error. Nobody collects lessons learned. There's if I'm sure you've been handed over a study where like a rescue study or something like that, and nobody manages studies the same way. Some people don't even manage the studies,
they just show up every day and kinda answer emails.
and so like we're wasting so much money in this industry. And so many of these things, instead of again throwing it at the flashy new tech or the new AI or new whatever, just taking a step back and getting back to the basics of are we training our people? Do they actually know how to perform their jobs? And is the training effective and efficient? Are we, or are we just kind of throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks? And I love like what you said and like how we're doing things a little differently, but there's space for all of us in this industry too. To like
That's how young it is. That's how big the gap is.
Ah, yeah, 100%. And I'm loving seeing more of that, like more of these conversations and more of these podcasts coming up because it is so much about people who are in the jobs who are able to train rather than it being, you know, and it's mostly clinical research professionals who are like, okay, I learned this the hard way. I don't, anybody
I
else
don't
has
wanna see anyone else do it this way. I know. And at the end of the day, I think what's missed is the fact that when we don't know what we're doing and we're running these very critical trials that give us data that allow us to make a submission and get a critically important drug to market that saves patients' lives or improves the quality of patients' lives. Now we're not just talking about financial loss, right? We're talking about human loss. And so I think sometimes we don't make that connection when we talk about the fact that we literally have teams running trials, millions of dollars worth of trials that don't know what the heck they're doing. And then we get to the end, we get the data, the study has failed. The p value is like, what the heck happened? And everyone's scratching their head, and the statisticians are trying to go back and I'm literally have sat in a corner and been like, y'all don't remember how bad the monitoring was? No, like, we had queries upon queries that were telling us the sites didn't understand the protocol, like, this is shocking.
Yeah. It's like there's been so many indicators throughout, and, that I don't know, I know we've talked about it, Melody, of the 95% of drugs that make it to clinical trial don't make it to market. They fail. And that's after, what, 10, 15, 20 years of preclinical testing? That is not just the science. And how do you even I mean, I know that Dr. Getz has put out some papers and everything about this, but so much of it is not the science. It has to be how we're managing our studies, the logistics, how, we don't plan. I don't know about you, but 99% of the studies I've been on, we don't have an accurate or like long enough planning phase. We literally just run.
Yeah,
And we've
well, we need the first patient in 3 months. No site collected, no vendors, no really stopping to assess risk. Is the protocol practical? Are we even gonna be able to enroll for this study? I've been asked before with feasibility in the site process, do we have to do this? Can't we just we got 100 sites, just put them in. When we gotta ask for feasibility and figure out all the things at each site. This is taking so much time. And I'm just
right. Yeah. Like, it takes time because it's gonna help us in the future, and if we take the time to plan it, then it's gonna help us whenever like, we're not gonna run into all these issues. It's so fascinating because I feel like ClinOps typically understands this,
yep,
but we're not the ones who are building the timeline.
decision maker.
We're not the ones who are even, like, speaking with the protocol design team. That's a scientific or medical writer,
Yeah,
and I'm like, Why is that?" Like,
I know.
if we were able to if it's not even operationally feasible, why are we putting
Did it. Yeah.
exact
But again, it all comes back to understanding project management principles, whether you have the certification officially or not, and the training and the development of the people that you task with running this through.
exactly. Because I mean, if you think about it too, we're all a bunch of scientists, right? For soft skills yeah, and soft skills aren't what they train us whenever we're getting our degrees. No, that is probably the last thing, but so many of us can agree that our soft skills are what get the jobs done, especially, because we have to have soft skills to speak to patients. We have to have soft skills to consent patients. We have to have soft skills to work with sites. Every part of our role requires that collaboration and communication, and that's not stuff that we're actually taught in
No,
college.
no. And I feel like the people that are just innately able to interact with other humans have the ability to be more successful than those that aren't. And that's not a fair advantage, really.
Right.
But we're train conductors in ClinOps, and we keep the train on the track and get it to the destination. And that means engaging with our partners, our internal stakeholders, our sites, everybody. And so it's so critical, so critical. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more, absolutely. But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think that if we took the time to adequately train and educate and, you know, plan our studies, there's so much of that 95% that we could change and all the lives that we could help in that as well as, and the bottom lines as well. We wouldn't be operating in the red.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right, because I mean, I think the statistic is $1 to $2 billion for drugs to actually make it to market, and where we're cutting corners is the training and education. You're putting billions
It
of
has
dollars.
to be just a small amount of the total budget. It had not even a considerable investment.
Not at all.
No,
Not at all, or even taking 2 months to plan and getting everybody on the same page, but that 2 months at the beginning is so hard to get
big.
tell people that we need, but we have 30 amendments on a protocol that lasts ends up being 3 years addition instead of just planning at the beginning.
Agree. My experience too. My experience too. Well, I want to wrap us up, but I have to put a shameless plug in 'cause this is the perfect segue for the fact that you and I are planning the first ever clinical research cruise conference. Well, excited. Can't even wait. And I love the feedback and the energy that we've gotten from so many people who are like, wait, what? This is awesome. Where's the information? And I know this is something you've dreamed up. I've had in my mind retreats, clinical research professional retreats. And when you and I got to talking, you were like, I want to do a cruise. And I was like, yes, I love that.
That's exactly how it went down too. You're like, "I wanna do a retreat," and I was like, "Can we do it on a cruise ship?"
And I was like, yes, when are we doing this? Let's go. And literally a month later, we were putting it out there in the universe that this is happening. Make your deposit, come go with us. And I want to make it abundantly clear that it's not a vacation. It is truly a conference with a vacation vibe. But like share a little bit about what we plan to do in terms of seminars and workshops while we're on this amazing cruise ship.
Absolutely. So I actually want to point out too. I think thank you for saying that because we've gotten a lot of feedback of people saying, "How do I get my company to approve it?" So I want to be honest with you guys. The reason that we're doing it on a cruise ship is because we can save you guys money. It is so expensive to go to these conferences. So most of the folks in clinical operations can't go because it's the conference fees. Right. The conference fees may be $1,500 to $3,000 a lot of times, and that doesn't include your food, your lodging, anything like that. And so for me, that was why I've been pushing cruise conferences for so long. And I did a ton of research because I was like, okay, this can't be as easy as it sounds, right? There's no way. And but it is. It really is. But yeah, and so we essentially for the rate of the room plus a small fee, you're able to go for the whole time and everything be included. So your rooms are going to be included, your food's going to be included, your essential drinks, so your sodas and those kind of things. Alcohol's not included, but there are some perks to working with Virgin and everything where you can get some alcohol packages on there. But the entertainment's included. So whenever you go to these conferences, even from a sponsored perspective where there's tech vendors and they are doing these meetups and everything, right? Even on a cruise ship, it's so much cheaper for you guys to be able to do that as well. And we're all on a boat together. So not only are we going to be able to network when we're having our sessions, we'll be able to network while we're on an excursion later on too, because this industry is built on relationships. So what we've been really aiming to do is with our agenda, doing the educational sessions and continuing education credits, all of those kind of things while we're not in port. So what that means is whenever we're not like at a destination. So when we're sailing. But we did a listing to ask or sorry, a survey on LinkedIn to ask if we wanted to do adults only or if we wanted to have it family friendly. And there was an overwhelming amount of people that wanted it to be adults only.
And yeah, this we love our children, but we want a break.
Yeah, exactly. We all need a break. I so we that's why we chose Virgin, and they have the best food as well. I'm a big fan of Virgin Cruises, and so that's why we went with this ship as well because it is a little bit more expensive, but at the same time, you get such quality for what you actually get. So there is going to, of course, be conferences. There's going to be tons of networking because you're stuck on a boat. I mean, there's only so many places you can go. So what kind of networking can you get that anywhere else?
We just need our kind of like that face to face interaction and community. I think 5 years later, coming off of the pandemic, we're still in such desperate need of that. And I think this gives us that, in addition to the professional development and training track that come along with this.
Right, and with that, like we started out saying with mental health and wellness, that is a big goal for this as well. Though we'll have clinical research, clinops, all those kind of things, but we're also going to have I'm a yoga instructor, mindfulness, meditation, those kind of things as well, because again, we want to support you guys as whole individuals. You're not just a means to an end for project delivery. So making sure that you're understanding how to take care of yourself in this crazy industry and also building those connections and community that are so necessary for yeah, for revival in this industry.
Exactly, exactly. All right, so we have the sign up. You can scan the QR code, book as soon as you can. The deposit's $300, and the earlier you book, the more likely you are to get some really cool incentives. And I do think that we could get to a point where we may have to close registration because this is our first one, and we want to make sure we can have the number of people go where we offer a great experience. And so don't delay. Come go with us. I think it'll be a blast. And I just want to say thank you, Jess, for joining me. I think we had a really good, insightful discussion about leadership, training and development, keeping our sanity while we're doing excellence in running trials. And I think you have to just come back and do this again because we got lots to talk about.
I was about to say we can be on here for hours and fun about all things. So, yes, thank you so much for having me and please join us on the cruise. We are so excited. I'm so excited that Melody wants to join in too because there's no way I could do this on my own. So, really looking forward to it and yeah, just excited about all the things to come.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Jess. Take care.
Thank you.